Hey everybody, Pierre-Paul Turgeon here. I'm super stoked to be here with a graduate student of mine, Shane Unruh, and to present to you another episode of the Canadian Multifamily Investing Insider blog. And Shane and I actually connected. I think Shane's about. So first of all, thank you, Shane, for being on this podcast. How are you, Shane?
Couldn't be better. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm extremely stoked to have you. You know that you're a busy guy. You were somewhere down south, I think, taking a course. Maybe you can tell us about that. But you and I reconnected because 3 weeks ago I was speaking in Edmonton at the Edmonton Real Estate Investor Association. And at the end, like I always do after a talk, I asked people to have questions. And you stood up at the back and gave me an outstanding endorsement for my course. And I didn't recognize you, but because you took the on-demand course only, you never took the actual live workshop, because as you just told me before we started recording, you were still in Manitoba. So why don't we start back there in Manitoba? How did you end up? And just before we started recording, you're about you're just closing on another deal of 111 units. And that will bring the total to 280 units. Did I get those numbers right, Shane?
That's right. Yeah.
All right. So give us, we don't want to be too long, but briefly, your story. How did you go from Manitoba, your store there, and until today? And I'll guide you through the process, perhaps with some questions.
Yeah. So for me, I was raised in a really small community in northern Manitoba. I was actually raised Mennonite, so there was no radio, no TV, nothing like that. I was the first one in my family to go past grade 9. Most of the Mennonites stop at grade 9. I went on only to play football, not really for the education portion. So I farmed my whole life, and when I think I was in my early 20s, I built a gym. That was my first business that we ran, and then we got into real estate kind of by chance. I had read an article in Forbes. It's called Mobile Home Park Millionaires. And it was literally like a week within reading that, the one mobile home park in our town went up for sale. And I remember I seen the price and it seemed really out there, and we got the numbers and it made a lot of sense. So we ran a mobile home park business. We bought a second park a little later on.
All in that same area of northern Manitoba?
Yeah, it was all around that same area. Yeah.
Which area is that? I think you mentioned it to me earlier.
Yeah, Swan River.
Swan River. Okay.
Yeah. So we had bought the park, and that's right around the time we kind of decided you can't scale that business very well. There isn't enough parks around. So like many people, we had a little bit of extra money. We decided we wanted to get into the mobile home park space, or the apartment space.
Yeah. And
that's when we started looking out west. My wife is from Edmonton, and I had spent lots of time in the winters working out here.
Okay.
So yeah, I could tell you that kind of our first experience with mobile home park, or with the apartment buildings, it wasn't quite as glamorous as I would have liked, but
it was in Edmonton, your first building. How many units was that, Shane?
Yeah, the first one was 8 units.
8 units, a small guy.
Yeah, at the time we didn't have much money, so we thought we were looking at stuff smaller, and we were able to find, came across what looked like the perfect deal. I mean, the guy was willing to do a VTB. We had a partner at the time, so we were able to get in. It had a guaranteed rent subsidy program in it, so they would the rents in this program no longer exist, but they guarantee the rent and the vacancy for up to 2 months. So you basically could run at 100% occupancy. So the numbers worked out great, right? So they could more than cover the VTB and everything. So we got into it for very little money in, and that's what kind of got our foot in the door. And then about a month or a couple months after we took over, we get a letter that program's getting cut. And so as the tenants leave, they won't replace them anymore. And it was kind of a funny story. I was sitting at my kitchen table one day, my kids playing in the living room next to me, making a bunch of noise.
How many kids do you have, by the way? Sorry, it's always good to know.
Yeah. No, I have 2 now. At the time, I have 2 boys. At the time, I only had the one.
What are their ages?
5 and 3.
Okay, very little. They require dad and mom around a lot still.
Oh yeah. And they grew up in we did all the renos and stuff ourselves starting out, so they grew up in the business.
Okay.
So I was just standing up to go play with him, and I get an email from we had a tenant had passed away, and our biohazard company sent us the invoice, and it just said he did not go peacefully. And he
Ouch.
had this tenant, yeah, he had died. He had banged his head. I think he was drunk, but he had walked around the entire apartment, and he was throwing up blood, and it was so bad they found pieces of his throat and stomach everywhere. And
Ouch.
yeah. And
Very graphic. Okay. Yeah, that stuff is had a few, of course, it's part of the business we're in. Yeah, it's pretty costly to clean up those units. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was a big expense. Then we had, the safety inspector came. Our railings were 1/8 of an inch too big, so we had to, that was 15 grand. And that building taught us a lot of very costly lessons. Like we thought we knew a lot going in, and it's if
I
we
take it at that time, when you bought your first eightplex, had you taken my own demand course yet?
I think for the second one we did, yeah. And on the financing side, that definitely helped a lot.
Okay, but we'll get to that in a moment. I want to jump ahead, but you hadn't taken my courses yet, because I would have warned you about, it's not always an easy business, that's for sure. You need to have thick skin for sure. Okay, so that's the eightplex. How did that store end up? So you've had some mishap. What other mishaps did you have with that first eightplex?
Oh yeah, it didn't end. So that once the subsidy program went, it was harder to get tenants in. But then we had the boiler went, and in the same month the hot water tanks went. So that's a huge expense on a building that size.
And let me stop you. You had not planned for this.
Not at all. No. So
okay. See, the reason I was asking, I want to have fun with you a little bit here. Yeah, taking my course, now better. These are things that I focus on: the risk, 4 key risk factors: property, market, valuation, the borrower risk. But right there, the physical, aspect of property risk is the first one. You don't want surprises like that. Okay, how do you solve that?
Well, you know what, that property, it didn't really, we were lucky enough, like I said, we hadn't put a ton of money in, and we had operating businesses that we could cover, the expenses that came. But I think our initial,
so your other businesses can't cover the losses for that eightplex, is what I'm hearing.
And that's a thing I think people need to be aware of, is like it can very easily, if you're not prepared, it can go from cash flow to you're putting money into that building. And on paper that looked very, very appealing, that investment. And we ended up, I think we put in, from what we were supposed to, about double the amount we've put in over the next couple of years.
Okay.
But luckily it, long term it works out. But
you still have that eightplex, Shane?
Yeah, it's actually under contract right now to sell, so hopefully.
Okay.
But now
someone
sorry.
Around.
It's fine. Yeah, it's some of the ones that aren't in our fund, so we're selling all of our smaller properties like that, and it just doesn't, it doesn't make sense to hold it.
Okay. And what about the next building? Is that before you bought the next building? Is that when I think you said you took my course, the on-demand version of it?
Yeah. So we took the course. It definitely helped with the financing side and getting a little more prepared, I think. And we were obviously, probably more cautious as well, and the price, everything worked out a lot better with the second one for sure. We were.
How many units was the second building, Shane?
The second one was 8 as well.
8 as well.
And,
okay.
So we did do a little bit of creative financing with that one, and then we were able to, within the first year, we were able to put we put CMHC financing on it. And
when you see creative financing, and the money for those 2 eightplexes came from you or shareholders, or where did?
So the first ones we bought, the first one was us and a partner, it was a friend of ours, and we each put in money. And then the second one we did, it was 2 other guys came in with us as well. We all put our money together. We were all friends back home. And now on the second one, when I say creative, we did I can't even think of the term. It's like an offer to purchase, where they hold the loan. They had a really bad loan, and that's why that property wasn't selling.
Agreement to purchase?
Yeah, agreement to purchase. Yeah. So we did that for the year. The rents were way low, and there was, it was mismanaged a little bit. So we were able to get the rents up and put CMHC debt on within the window. It was a 16-month window, I think.
Okay, so you kind of took a bridge loan, maybe, or you just worked directly with the vendor in that regard?
Yeah, directly with the vendor. Yeah, they held
to increase the rents and do your thing. And after just for the people watching, an agreement for sale is just at a certain point, there's a transfer of the property. So that's what. But you were in possession already, and you were able to go in and fix fix the problems that that property had. So that's a great way of going about it for sure, right?
Yeah.
And then you go to apply for financing. As some of you may know, if you've been watching, like some of my students, including last night, the masterclass, you always go for financing when your net operating income is at its highest point, because
Yeah.
they tend to ding you on valuation, especially if you go CMHC, right, Shane?
Yeah.
They rarely use market value. We know that. So, okay, well, that's pretty cool. So that's the eightplex. I appreciate, before we started recording, I said, yeah, we do want to hear from your mistakes. It's fair to say, and that includes myself, all of us make mistakes. For me, the kind of mistakes I made as the first property was a bit of a dog in not the best of area. I think I got too excited. Oh yeah, I want to buy multifamily. And, I should have looked at the market area a little bit better. But we all have mistakes. So this is something that you pointed out to me correctly. You got to be able to withstand stuff like that and have contingencies in place. So I think it's a fair but. But what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Don't you agree, Shane?
Yes, I'd agree. Yeah. Yeah, so I would echo that. What I always tell people, and I'm sure you'll teach, a lot of this is in the course, but there's so many things that on paper, it's so easy to make a deal work. And I think people get caught up. There's certain things where like they work at scale and they don't at a certain scale. So the one that I hear people doing all the time right now that I think is a little bit that people should watch for, they buy a property for $1 million and they use the new CMHC program where they're putting 5% down.
MLI Select.
Yeah. So, I mean, great product, great to get into a property, but they'll advertise they're getting an 8% return. Well, that's all fine and good, but that's $4,000. That's all that means. So that build for the year.
Cash on cash. You're not putting in that money if you're financing 95% of the deal. Yeah.
So people have to know that with scale, that all works good. But when it's so little, the odds of you being $4,000 within your pro forma are pretty slim. That's one tenant not leaving the tenancy branch is backed up months right now. We just had a tenant, it took 3 months. We did everything, and they got 2 stays from a judge, then they got COVID, then they got long COVID, and they kept getting stays. So, it takes months and months. And if that's a 2 unit or a 4 unit, that's your year, that's.
It's and there's a tendency, MLI Select, I believe, is a great program, but there is some downside, right? If you get a deal that's got a DCR, debt coverage ratio of 1.1, there's not a lot of slack in there. It doesn't take much for the project to go south. And of course, if you finance 95% of the deal, which is the maximum, right? And I'm not going to explain all of it, you guys, because it's part of the course as well. Now that it's new program that she came out with in March of this year, 2022. But it can fit some markets. And then anyway, I don't want to get into it, but it's something that you definitely need to look into. But it's not for everybody, and there are some downside, because if you go up to 95% and you extend the amortization, I think the maximum is 50 years. I think it is 50 years. It's going to take you a hell of a lot of time to pay down that loan. So when are you going to make money? I mean, you obviously get cash flow, but anyway. So just it's worth doing the research. I appreciate you pointing out some of the drawbacks, because there are drawbacks, and it's not all rosy.
No.
Okay, so then now you've got 2 eightplexes. What's the next step? Because now you're going to be right now you've got 169, and you're taking possession soon of another 111 units, 111 doors.
Yeah. So for us, kind of our journey, I guess we had the businesses, and we had the 2 small properties here. We did have like a kind of a 5-year plan to move out here, and we were actually we were down at a conference down in the States, and my wife got on board with everything, and we kind of decided we were going to expedite the process, the move. And then like the week I got home, I was on the board for the Chamber of Commerce at the time, and I was sitting and just hearing everyone talk about how, the negatives of the town and the businesses. And I just thought, I don't want to be here for 5 more years and try to grow here.
This is back in Manitoba.
Yeah, back in Manitoba still so we had someone else managing here. And so we decided to up and move, and I hate everything about COVID, but the timing for us, it just couldn't have worked better. Like we just right away pulled the pin, put the gym for sale. I knew a guy wanted to buy it. It was called Fit 24/7, the gym. So it had never been closed even for a day, a minute, but since we owned it, it was 24-hour access. And the week that the paperwork was signed and the deal went through was the first week of restrictions. So, had we held out a month.
Wow. Yeah. Saved by the bell,
Yeah.
literally.
Yeah. And
wow.
then we came to the city and we had some cash. We had sold the business. And we came at a time when everyone.
When you say to the city, this is Edmonton.
Edmonton. Yeah.
Edmonton.
So we came at a time when everyone had pulled out of the market, all the deals we looked at, there was money had been left there and they pulled out.
So we're talking literally the beginning of COVID 2020.
Yeah, like, and first lockdown. So like we drove around the Henday, you wouldn't pass a car for miles. Like it was wild.
And yeah, exactly. I think I was going to ask you, to do that. I was about to do it myself. You remember how we all felt like, is the world coming to an end? Are we all going to die of COVID? People were going out, wearing masks, and it was mayhem. And in the multifamily business, same idea. What's going to happen to our tenants? How are we going to collect rent? And all the programs, the assistance program from the federal government and so on. So it was mayhem, right? It was chaos. So it's okay. So you arrive at, you sold your gyms at the right time. You arrived in Edmonton, and then what?
Yeah, so we were buyers in a buyer market. There was no one else really at the table. So we were able to pick up some really good property. And also, there's times it's not maybe the easiest to get in front of some of the big broker, or if it's a really hot market, they have clients they deal with, or they give you a 10 people get the list of the good property. But this was a time when there wasn't buyers. So we were able to get to know the top couple brokers in the city and built a lot of them are, I'd consider them friends. They're
who I met. I know who they are. We don't need to mention them here, but I had coffee with them last week. So
Good.
Yeah, and when I do the edit, Shane, I'll show some of your properties, which are beautiful. I'm jealous. I mean, I'm really jealous, but man, they look great. That they're newer properties, and in great markets. So yeah, absolutely. So that's you're truly a contrarian, basically, right? When people froze, you took action, and it's funny. I was telling you, I feel there's a bit of that going on right now in the marketplace. People freezing. Because of this inflation that we're experiencing, and you know what, you're a role model in that. It's maybe the way around. There are opportunities out there. I believe that as well, instead of being in a state of fear. So you're a great example of that, Shane. So fantastic. So okay, so you were buyers. Nobody was moving because they were afraid, because we're in the middle of COVID. Everybody's freaking out, but Shane Unruh said, I got money. I sold my gyms at the right time. I escaped that reality of, maybe losing my business back in Manitoba. And so what did you buy next? What was the next purchase?
Yeah. So the first property we bought, it was bigger than the smaller ones we owned. It was a group. It was 27 townhomes. Okay. But that too, you buy it, I think on the rent roll, there was 2 vacant, we get in there 7. So, that's huge. That's 30%. And so that first year, we were at those properties 7 days a week, 12 hours a day renovating them. We did it all ourselves. So it was me and my wife, our 2 boys were there.
Get out, just you and your wife.
Yeah. At the beginning, we have my brother-in-law he runs now the operations side of our management. We own a management company that manages this for ourselves. So he was doing that side of it, and we were doing all the renovations. And so it was very busy. And the guys who had sold us the first one, it was Qualico actually, but they had a second one that was, they were built at the same exact time as the St. Albert property. So we bought that, I think, 6 months after or something. And then we started getting, a lot of people were seeing what we were doing.
Sorry, I want to slow you down. So that those townhomes, was it also with your capital that you got from selling the gyms? So no outside money yet?
No, not yet. No. So the first 2, it was just us. My mom came in as an investor, I think, on the second one, and then we started taking on other investors later on.
Okay, not with the townhomes, but after that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we want to get to that a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. So. But yeah, it was all us. But then we started getting, when we bought the second one, for sure, like a lot of people asking, they're like, oh, we love what you're doing. We want to invest. I was always a little cautious. I just wanted to make sure we always like, I'm a big picture guy. So we have a very aggressive plan for the future. And we had that from our first day one. That's the only reason we probably kept going with it, because it wasn't going well. But we were never planning to have 8 units or 20 units or 100. We wanted it scaled. So
But they were a
because
stepping stone, right?
yeah,
Both of these smaller buildings. Yeah.
yeah. And it, we had to do it that way. So because of that, I didn't want to bring in a bunch of people as like a note, but whatever, without the proper structure. And so we wanted to make sure that we weren't, getting to this level with a, kind of a certain structure that's not going to work at a big level. So we, after the second property, we kind of had located the third one, and we had a bunch of people lined up that wanted to invest. And that's when we set up the structure we have now. And we rolled our 2 properties into it, and the new property we bought inside of the fund that we have now.
I want to unpack a few things. You said, so after bought the 2 8-plexes, then moved on to the townhouses. Were they all individual titles, or is it one title for all the townhomes, all the townhouses?
Yeah, so they were
titled.
Yeah, they were technically condo. They were built like that, but they had been owned by the builder for the last forever, since they were built. So they were like, it was one title, but there was 27 separate condo unit, which we've got rid of since then. But yeah.
Okay. And then you bought the next project. Yeah. You said you started getting visibility. People started seeing that that they liked what we were doing.
Yeah.
Please explain, because you and I know, right? That there's lots of people wanting to invest in multifamily properties, right? And gosh, if you haven't, I mean, maybe not you, Shane, you probably don't need, well, you don't need to watch my master classes, but I'm on it. I was giving one last night, and boy, oh boy, like it more than ever, it continues to make sense to invest in apartment buildings. We have a housing crisis. They don't build enough housing. That problem's not going to be solved for decades. Of course, the cost of money. Sure, the cost of money is a lot more expensive than a few years back, right, Shane? I still have interest rates, or still have a loan, I think at 2.2 something interest rate. Cost of money is going up, but that doesn't mean you stop. No, I mean, it's still not 18% like it was in the 80s, right? 18% interest rates. But how did you get that? So my point is, there's lots of people willing to invest their money. The stock market does not look so great either these days. So I keep telling people, if you know what you're doing, that is how to do the analysis and how to get the financing. And basically that in turn, those were my words last night, Shane, when I was giving a masterclass on financing. That's how you build confidence. Like, you took my course. We still have to hear at the end how that helped you, but how did you get that visibility and exposure to people with money? If you can talk to us about that, that would be very helpful for the listeners. Yeah.
And the other thing that actually, I'll just back up one little bit, that helped with the second property. We bought the first one, and I had posted something on social media about the sign or something, and someone reached out and asked if we wanted to keep our parks back home or sell them. So we were able to sell that when we got into the second one, which helped with the funding as well. But it was at the beginning, if you don't have a reputation or anything substantial to show, it's probably friends. A lot of it's friends and family, and that's an easy way to get people. A lot of those people.
And you also don't get in trouble with the Securities Commission, which we don't can expand on that, but you always got to be careful with that. You can't have some kind of relationship with the people that you invest with, otherwise you get in trouble with the Securities Commission.
Yeah, so there's a lot of friends and family, and the industry is fairly small, so people see what you're doing, and obviously if you're doing good, they love jumping on the ship. So people, I was actively networking too and trying to meet people, but
what kind of, can you expand on that, the kind of networking we're doing just to inspire people or give them ideas? You said
so, I mean, you can meet people anywhere. For me, I was very, very lucky when I first moved, or even before I moved, I had met a broker on the finance side, and he's lived here his whole life and knew a lot of people, so he was able to introduce me to a lot of people. But I still I do stuff as much as I can, and what we're doing now a little more, we started about a month ago, is putting out more content on social media and stuff just to meet people. And I always get asked like, oh, what, how do we learn it, or how do what do we do? And I'm not going to teach it, but I'll give away some free advice and tell them to come do your course. But
thank you. But okay, and that's you and I reconnected 3 weeks ago at the Edmonton Investor Association, the Real Estate Association. So that's something you do as well.
Yes,
Right. And you
and that's just
there. How do you select investors, Shane? Because you and I know, I mean, I guess all of this stuff that you're describing to me has happened because you took my on-demand course. I looked at my system. It was in 2019. We're just 2022. You have been moving like at the speed of light, man. Like, holy crap. What? So how did you get to get that kind of exposure? How did you do that?
So the big thing for me was having the structure set up properly so that I knew
sorry, I was forgetting my question. So how do you select investors? Because it's I don't know if you have horror stories, but I have, generally speaking, I've been very lucky with my shareholders, but there's a couple bad apples, right? So how do you go about that?
So a lot of the people, there is some relationship there, and that's, they either know us or our COO now or someone, there's a relationship there. So we kind of know the people going in.
Okay. So you're not taking anybody cold.
We do, but they're accredited, but usually there's some type of, we do know a lot of the people. But yeah, you kind of know
what I'm trying to say, or have you say here, it's a long-term marriage. You've got to be careful, and you got to make sure you're in sync with those potential investors. I would not, and I've turned down large sums of money myself. So that's the reason why I'm asking if I can help you with your answer there, but because I'm curious to see how you go about this particular subject.
Yeah. And we always make them aware that it's this isn't, I don't like the people who get up and say, we double the property value in a year or whatever. That's not going to happen. You might double the investment, but to say the value, and I've heard people do that. I don't agree with that. But so a lot of that is, we make it very clear. I underwrite and I show people way below where I think we're going to be, if
under promise and hopefully over deliver.
Yeah.
Okay,
and you don't really
you take accredited investors only.
Sorry?
You take accredited investors only.
Yeah, unless they are personal friends or family. We do have like a lot of my friends have, have invested, and we've looked into the option for our next fund. We might try to do something else, but right now it's accredited. Okay. And the other thing, I think when you run into maybe more problems, if it is accredited, you're probably not taking the guy's last dollar. He's not investing. They probably have enough. Then the concerns aren't always there. Like,
yeah, and let me slow it down a little bit. So accredited investors, every province has a different definition of that, but it's usually on average somebody's gets an income of roughly a couple of $100,000, $250,000 a year, and has had X income for the last couple of years. I'm generalizing, but that's kind of the gist. Hence your point that they're if they invest with you, they're not down to their last penny, and they're smarter. They're considered by Securities Commission to be smarter, to be able to analyze business opportunities like that. So just as a heads up for people watching, Shane, I just wanted to feel, and I've done it that way simply because I picked people with a high net worth that turned out to be, by a sheer coincidence, accredited investors by the sheer amount of income they were making a year. Now because I'm also, as I mentioned, anybody interested, you can give me a shout. I am in an acquisition mode and a capital raising mode. Just putting final touch to systems. But anyways, it's important that you understand that, though, because if you pick people that don't understand the business, like I said, I've been very, very blessed, generally speaking, but there's a couple bad apples, have no understanding of the business, how to run it. So anyways, okay, so that's sort of where the approach that you're taking now. Okay.
Yeah, and I always tell people too that everyone, where do we start? And maybe for some people it is better, like, to invest with someone like you in a pool where the risk is spread out. Like, like I said, if that 8-unit building was inside of hundreds of units in a portfolio or a couple different ones, we wouldn't have felt that. But if it's on one small building that you buy yourself and that's kind of all your capital, it's a lot harder. So I'm not saying people shouldn't do it, but some people, the first step might be getting in with a guy like you, investing in a, in a few more, maybe bigger scale than they could do themselves. And then you can learn it along the way. Like they're to invest in something like a big REIT, you're not getting any much information there. But I'm sure with you, like with us, we always take our investors to the property, we do the tours, and
It's
I love
open
that.
book,
Yeah,
open books on
yeah,
everything. Absolutely. No, and it's very thorough. No,
yeah.
absolutely. Anything else you can think of, Shane? How would you explain? So now you're going to be soon a multifamily owner of 280 doors. From what do you think is people out there that take my course, and sometimes there are times I've got plans as well. I keep saying this for myself, and I don't know how much longer I'll be teaching this stuff, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I like it. I really enjoy it, but it's not my full life, and I'm getting my mortgage agent license, by the way. So between now and before Christmas. I don't know why it's taken me so long, because I train mortgage agents in my class. Anyway, different story.
Yeah.
But what's next? So from that guy who was a farmer, a Mennonite farmer in Manitoba, what's the biggest hurdle to get to the point where now you have a fund, you have beautiful properties, and like I said, when I edit this video, I'll add the pictures as we speak in the video. What's the biggest hurdle for people to get in on this game? I mean, your journey was very unique, but it's clear to me. And again, appreciate for people watching this. I didn't know this story until this morning. I was so anxious to hear back from Shane how he got to where he is today. I didn't know the story. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for people to get into the multifamily business? Like I said, your journey was special. From a farmer, you had a couple of companies, gyms, and you sold those at the timely time and all of that. But generally speaking, from your interactions with other multifamily owners and the stakeholders that you and I talk to on a regular basis in our market, what's the biggest hurdle for people to break through into the multifamily investing game?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's fear that you have no idea where to start, or you start and you maybe don't have the information to keep going. That for me, what kind of changed my mindset with everything in life is it was one of the first big conferences I went to. I went down to Miami to this one, and there was probably 8 people there that were billionaires or hundreds of millionaires, and they all get up and talk. And I kind of had this realization, there's nothing special there. They're not super genius. They studied something and did it. And some of them I wouldn't even know if they're that, like, I'm sure they're smart to get to where they are, but you don't have that thought of like, man, this person is just, a supremely intelligent person. So that kind of changed my mindset. I'm like, well, if they can do it, why couldn't I? And then a lot of it I learned, like, I absolutely love this business. So it's my only hobby, really. I love everything about it. I'm reading all the time, and courses and stuff like that. People always, the argument there is like, when I have a bit more money, I'll buy this course, or maybe when I used to hear this at the gym, it's like, when I get in shape, I'll come to the gym. And I'm like, well, that's opposite, right? You come to the gym to get in shape. If you want to do a course on making money, you don't wait till you have money to do the course. You do the course and make money. And
can I add something there? I'm older than you. Not saying this to brag or anything. I turned 60. I think you know that when I came back from Europe a few weeks ago. But I tell people now, maybe this is not good marketing, but if you want to buy a multi-million-dollar asset and you can't dish out $2,700,
yeah.
I say you're in the wrong frame of mind. Don't bother showing up to my workshop, right?
Yeah.
Right, Shane? And I mean, this is very blunt. It's probably very bad marketing, but
yeah,
that's why we have my training program is very experiential, getting real. Like, you don't know this, Shane, but look, man, I wear different hats when I teach, right?
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes I speak as a former underwriter. Sometimes I give my thoughts as an investor, and because I got legal training, I did real estate when I was younger, right? I have the legal hat, so I try to give people as much perspective, but it's not all roses. But at the end of the day, mindset don't. So if I hear you correctly, and that revelation when you went to that conference, it was in Miami, you said,
yeah,
I can do it. I can do it too. I think that says it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's important. And there is things like, you just brought up the CMHC thing, but I think that's something where, like, if you don't know going in, there will be surprises there of what you're going to go through on that side. So that's where I think, the course can be helpful. And the $2,700, like that, when I initially said that about you, that at the when we met there a couple of weeks ago. The thing that I tried to get across, and a lot of people in real estate teach a course after doing it. They maybe do real estate for a year and they own one small building, or they've done one flip, and they try to run a course on it. And you actually have a track record, the financing side, that's a huge portion of it, and that you've been in it for years and years. And same with the real estate, and you have the properties to show that. That's why I think it's a lot more credible when you run a course than
And
a
the
lot
danger I see, Shane, and I guess success breeds imitations. I have a lot of my students that do teach multifamily investing, but the perspective that they come at it from, and it sometimes it annoys me, but I guess it's a sign of my success. They're more in it, teaching it to raise capital, right? Which is okay. I mean, it is okay, but I don't know. I think I'm very unique. I know I'm very unique in Canada from the kind of perspective I provide in the business. Well, listen, Shane, so that was a great endorsement. So the money you spent on this on-demand course with me, you thought was well worth it, and you would you recommend this course to people? Putting you on the spot, but I know the answer because you gave it to me a few weeks ago without me knowing that you were one of my past students.
No, 100%.
Hesitating. What would you say to people hesitating to take this course? Because I've got early bird price on. It ends on November 1st, and it gives them access. Which, Shane, if you could have, but you could have done it that way. I sell the on-demand course plus coming to the 3-day live workshop. Why? Because I want people to go through the on-demand. Because at the live virtual workshop, I have more case studies. We analyze more deals in class, and I share everything without holding back, even how I raise capital and all that. So if you could have done it that way, but what do you say if people sitting on the fence, not willing to spend $2,700 for the course that I offer?
Yeah, that value, it's crazy cheap, honestly. Even at any level, like if you're gonna get into the business, you're gonna spend that on every aspect of it, and you could save that so easily. Like I said, there's one little thing that you might save a fee on, or any that's going to cost that. When you're buying multifamily, it's higher. It is a higher ticket thing. You're spending more money. That little bit, if you think of what a college education costs that you probably aren't going to use at all, it says something like this, it really is very, very well priced. And like I said, you just have to jump in and do it. Like I look at my life, at any point, if I decided, hey, I'm going to wait 2 months or we would have never sold the gym, there's so many times in my life where I've just I went to that conference kind of last minute. I bought the tickets. I didn't want to spend, I didn't have the money, and it was very cheap at the time. It was a couple $100, but I was like, I had to fly there and go there. And it was like, but you did it. And it, you might take one thing from it. Pretty much I do tons of stuff still. And it's not like you take this, but you might take one little clip or one little thing that changes your perspective on investing or
You know what, Shane, this has been an amazing interview, and I want people to appreciate it. I too learn. Actually, you and I are gonna get together. I want to learn a little bit more in details in terms of how you structure yourself for my own purpose, because I like to consult, see other, and I'll share with you what I do. But if I string all the things that you've said to me in this interview, starting from your life as a Mennonite farming in Manitoba and owning gyms, and I'm going to say something funny. When you stood up and you started saying good things about my course 3 weeks ago at that Real Estate Investors Association, first thing I noticed, you're tall and you're freaking svelte like my 24-year-old son who's at the gym all the time. And there's a thread here, being somebody that works out a lot, what it requires, and that, as you said in your example, most people say, oh, I'll go to the gym when I'm in better shape. No. It's commitment. You are somebody who is committed, whether it's for bodybuilding or whatever, and your business. And I what I told people, I tell oftentimes in my workshops when I speak, it's there's one guy, John Assaraf. I happened to meet him a couple of times in that movie, The Secret, in my business coaching group, because I too took training and spent a lot of money, even to do what I'm doing now. But are you just interested or committed to doing something? And clearly, multifamily investing, Shane, you'll agree with me, is not for tire kickers. So you've got to be fully committed. You went to that conference to improve your knowledge, even though you didn't have money. I've done exactly the same thing including getting a business coach when I didn't have an income coming when I left my job at CMHC. So I think why I believe a person like you succeeds is because you are committed. When you decide I'm going to do this, and I urge people watching this interview to do that. That's what you have to do. But just like Shane, just like myself, coming from a small mining town in northwestern Quebec, number 9 family of 12 kids. I did not grow up with a portfolio worth over $22 million or something like that. So, but once you commit, you got to stay the course. Anything else you want to add to this, Shane, in ending this amazing interview?
I think we covered it. I appreciate the time. It was good chatting. For me, it was cool. Like I said, I've followed you, listened to a lot of the podcasts you're on and stuff for years now. And there's lots of knowledge there. You give away a lot of stuff for free too. And yeah, you did touch on it earlier, but if you can't spend $2,000 or $3,000 on something, you're probably not getting into multifamily. Like, you don't have the money. And I always say, we'll go to do a deal, on the bigger stuff, it's not a problem because it's that you're dealing with more an institution. But when we used to buy the small stuff, we had a guy, we signed the contract, and he pulled the cameras out of the building the night the sale went through. He stole, on a $1 million property, he took $2,000. And I always think people get caught up, and because that's that $2,000 or whatever, it is a lot of money, but in the scheme of financing a building or something, it's not a lot.
I have a quote in my office here. This is not my office, my studio, but don't cheap out on your way up. And that's cheaping out. I mean, it's you got to look at, and I think that's the other quality that you have. You have your eyes on the big picture. Well, listen, I'm very grateful. You made my day. Obviously, when I get a success story from a student of mine, I'm like a proud dad, I always say. So thank you for making my day. Like I said, you and I will catch up, and I want to hear more details beyond this interview. So once again, Shane Unruh, and I forgot to mention, you're with Excess Asset Management. I believe that's your company.
Yeah, that's our company. Yeah.
If you tell me, if you want people to reach out to you, I can, with your permission, I can put that at the bottom. But anyway,
that'd be great. Like I said, we're doing more stuff on social media to give some value to people. We're just starting.
People, do you want to give your contact? I mean, I can do this from the video, Shane. So
yeah, so
what do you want to do? I should have asked you that before but anyway,
no, that's fine.
I can
edit it. Pretty much any social media, it's Excess Asset Management, or
so
me.
We're talking about Excess
Asset
Management.
Right.
Okay, very well. That's a fancy term, by the way, plastified. Wow, I'm impressed.
Yeah. And or personally on LinkedIn, it's just my name, Shane Unruh. So yeah, just reach out, and whether it's coffee or chatting or whatever, I'm always here for it. So
okay, but not wait you guys until I've had my chat with him. There's more I want to hear from Shane about. All right, Shane, thank you so much. You're a scholar and a gentleman. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.
All right, thank you.